Welcome to our channel, Speak English with Eric. Here we talk about everything about the language, from grammar to composition to communication skills, everything that has to do with your use of the English language. We believe that your language is your bargaining power, so it is our duty to make it skilled. So today we want to talk about something very interesting about phobias, fears. What are your fears? What do you fear? Do you fear dogs? Do you fear cats? Do you fear animals? Do you fear needles, injections? Right. So there are so many fears that exist in the world. And today we want to look at just about 20 of them. They are countless. We could go on and on and on, but we've collated about 20 of them to share with you, to know the many fears that exist in the world, to alert you about your own fears and the fears of others, so that when we are around people, we will know what triggers their fears, so that we would know how to live with people. Right. So phobia is a type of anxiety disorder which causes an individual to have extreme and irrational fear about something. It could be a creature, it could be a situation, it could be a place, it could be a habit. All right. So in this session, the goal is not to make recommendations for how to deal with most of these fears, because it's a psychological issue that you need someone who is trained with a psychological background to help you. But the goal is for us to know the kinds of phobias that exist in the world, to know the names for them, so that if we are making references to phobias, then we know that we are dealing with this specific one. So that's our goal for today, to know the kinds of phobias that exist and the names given them. Right. So don't go anywhere, stick and stay as we delve into these phobias. Let's do this. Phobia number 1, aerophobia. Aerophobia, from the words aero and phobia. Aero has to do with flying, and so we can talk about aeroplane, aeronautics, right? So everything that has to do with aero has to do with flying, and phobia is a fear. So aerophobia, the fear of flying. So a person who has this fear or phobia is aerophobic. Aerophobic. So the noun form is aerophobia, and the person who has this fear is aerophobic. B-I-C instead of B-I-A, which is the noun form. So aerophobia. The second phobia, which is also an interesting one, is acrophobia or acrophobia, which is a fear of heights. There are people who would never want to be on a tall story building because they fear heights. These people can't go paragliding or hiking because it deals with height, right? And so a person who has this fear is acrophobic. Acrophobic. So the fear of heights is acrophobia, and the person who has this fear is acrophobic. So that's our second phobia that we want to talk about. The third phobia, which is interesting and funny at the same time, is ablutophobia. Ablutophobia. Can you guess what this means? Let's see it in the comment section. Ablutophobia. So it's a combination of the word abluto and phobia. Abluto and phobia. That's abluto, ringing a bell, ablution, which means to wash. And so the fear of bathing or washing is called ablutophobia. I'm not asking you to mention names of people who are ablutophobic, but I want you to know that there's a phobia called ablutophobia. Nobody should mention the names of guys who don't like usually to take their bath. It's normal. It's a fear, actually. And so don't blame them too much, because they could have triggers with cold water and all that, especially when the weather is not that convenient for bathing. All right. So that's ablutophobia. the fear of bathing or the fear of washing. Phobia number 4. Phobia number 4. Bibliophobia. Bibliophobia. So biblio has to do with books. So a person who has a fear of books is bibliophobic. The phobia itself is called bibliophobia. And so such a person doesn't like books because they fear books. For example, if they go to the library and they see a lot of books, they are scared, they are terrified. And so they can have an instant panic attack, right? So that's how bad some fears can be. And so such a person doesn't really like books because just flipping pages, just seeing books in stashes and all that can make them have triggers. So that's our phobia number 4, bibliophobia. Bibliophobia. Phobia number 5, cynophobia. Cynophobia. This is a fear of dogs. I don't know if you have any bad experience with dogs, but I do, and so I understand people who are xenophobic, right? For me, I also think I'm xenophobic because of a horrible past experience I had with a dog who had to chase me for a long time before the owners could call it back to reason with them, right? So such a fear of dogs is called xenophobia. So are you xenophobic or do you know someone who's xenophobic? It's basically a fear of dogs. Phobia number 6, gamophobia. Gamophobia. Can you guess what this fear actually means? So this is a fear of marriage or of commitment. So there are people who have this irrational fear of getting married or staying committed to a person. So such a person is gamophobic. Gamophobic. Do you know anyone who is gamophobic? Do you know anyone who is struggling with this fear of gamophobia? Right. Fear number 7, glossophobia. Glossophobia. So glosso has to do with speaking. So a person who has this fear of speaking in public, right? A person who has fear in speaking in public is glossophobic. So glossophobia is the fear of speaking in public. This is why I can offer some kind of help regarding how you can overcome the fear of public speaking. In one of our subsequent videos, we'll be talking about very key practical steps to help you overcome the fear of public speaking. As we grow up as academics, as people, as fathers, as mothers, as people occupying different roles in communities, at the workplace, wherever we find ourselves, it becomes inevitable that we are definitely going to have to speak in front of people, in front of publics, in front of a classroom or wherever. Therefore, it is important for us to deal with this kind of irrational fear of speaking in public. So that kind of fear is called glossophobia. So a person who has this fear is glossophobic. Glossophobic. Phobia number 8, androphobic. Androphobic. So andro has to do with men, right? Andro. And so we talk about andropos, right? So the fear of men is also called androphobia. There are people who fear men, right? It's an irrational fear, or it's an irrational fear of men. So such a fear is called androphobia. A person with this fear is androphobic. So that takes us to our fear number 9, which is the opposite of androphobia, which is gynophobia. Gynophobia. So gyno has to do with women or anything related to females. So you can talk about gynecologist, right? So a fear of women is gynophobia. Gynophobia. So a man who has this kind of fear is gynophobic. Gynophobic. One interesting thing is you may find these fears, these phobias quite interesting and strange, but it is actually the reality that some people are living, right? They may have triggers as soon as they come into contact with some of these items or situations that they have phobias for. And so if you live with such a person, it's not for you to make fun of it. If you can offer any kind of help and support, it is important that you do. You have to be empathetic. It's not about you making fun, making mockery of them, sometimes forcing them to do whatever they fear to do. Otherwise, you may not hear good news. For example, if someone is acrophobic and the person doesn't like height, the person fears height, and then you decide to force the person to be at the topmost of something, a mountain or a place, a building, and the person has triggers and the person falls, right? You may never forgive yourself for such a situation. That's why we are listing some of these fears so that you know that these are realities of people that they are struggling with, that they are dealing with. So if you can offer any kind of support, it is important that you do so. Phobia number 10, hemophobia. Hemophobia. So hemo has to do with blood. So you can talk about hemorrhage and all that. And so a fear of blood is hemophobia. So I have people who decided not to go into healthcare because they have fear of blood. They can't just deal with it. So people who originally wanted to be nurses but realized they'll be dealing a lot more with blood and all that, and so they can't do it. So they just abstain from it. So that's how intense some of these fears can be. It can make people just avoid those items, those things for the rest of their lives because they don't want to have triggers. They don't want to have any bad experiences with them. And so it becomes something that they try to avoid as much as possible. So the fear of blood is called hemophobia. And the person who has this fear is hemophobic. Phobia number 11, nomophobia. Nomophobia. I'm sure most of us, especially in this 21st century social media life, have this kind of phobia. That is the fear of being away from your phone. Does it ring a bell? Does it trigger something? The thought that your phone is not with you, or your phone is, the battery has run down and so you can't use it. Technology is not working and so you can't use your phone. The network is not working and so you cannot use your phone. That fear of not being able to use your phone or being around or being with your phone, that kind of fear is nomophobia. I know people, when they walk out of the house to work and they realize their phone is not with them, the whole day they can't function. So it either they come back for the phone or they go to wherever they go and then they are not going to be functional, right? That's how intense this kind of phobia can be. So the fear of not having your phone or not being able to use your phone is called nomophobia, and such a person is nomophobic. Nomophobic. Fear number 12, nyctophobia. Nyctophobia. This is the fear of dark or darkness or of dark places. I remember when we were young, when there were power outages and nobody was in the house, being left alone in the dark, I would find every means possible to get out of the house to a place where there are other people because I fear the dark, right? So that kind of fear is called nyctophobia. There are people who would have crises or triggers when there are power outages because they can't deal with being in the dark, right? So that fear is nyctophobia. Nyctophobia. So such a person is nyctophobic. Nyctophobic. Phobia number 13, Scolionophobia. Scolionophobia. This is interesting and funny. I'm sure when we were all young, at some point, we were all scolionophobic because this is the fear of school. The fear of school. So there are people who just hate school. They have so much fear of going to school, and so they decide to stay away from school. That kind of fear is called scolionophobia. So such a person is scolionophobic. Do you know anyone who is scolionophobic, or are you scolionophobic yourself? Right. So that's phobia number 13, scolionophobic. Phobia number 14, somniphobia. Somniphobia. So somni has to do with sleep, and so the fear of sleep is somniphobia. Somniloquist, the person who talks in their sleep, right? So somni has to do with sleep. So a person who has fear of sleeping is called somniphobic. So there are people who usually have bad dreams, terrible nightmares, and so often they don't like to sleep because they know that anytime they sleep, they would have those kinds of experiences or seizures. So such a person has fear of sleep. So they will try everything possible to work in the night. So some actually turn into nocturnals because they don't like to sleep. They fear sleeping. So the fear of sleep is somniphobia, and the person who has this fear is somniphobic. Fear number 15, or phobia number 15, technophobia. Technophobia. I'm sure you'll be able to guess what this means. So the fear of technology is technophobia. So most people who are really conventional, traditional, used to just the manual way of doing things, just the orthodox ways of doing things, such people are technophobic because they don't like new technologies. And so WhatsApp has come, they don't like to use it. Right now, AI is in vogue. Such a person doesn't really like it. ChatGPT, all these new technologies that are coming up, such a person doesn't really like them. He hates them. He fears them. And so that fear is technophobia. Technophobia. And the person who has it is technophobic. On the opposite side, a person who loves technology is also a technophile. Technophile. Such a person loves new technologies, and so AI has come up. The person who would love to work with it. Any kind of technologies that emerge, such a person loves them and tries to use them. So such a person is a technophile. But on the other side, if the person hates it, fears it, the person is a technophobe, or the person is technophobic. All right. Phobia number 16, xenophobia. Xenophobia. This is the fear of strangers or of foreigners or of new people. So it's xenophobia. So we've heard of many xenophobic attacks in some countries, which is something that we all need to speak against because we live in a global multicultural society that we are gradually moving in different terrains, in different countries. We are moving for purposes of education, business, commerce, international relations, and other things. And so definitely you would have new people coming into your space, in your countries. And so it is something that we all need to speak against, about xenophobic attacks and all that. So a person who fears strangers or foreigners is xenophobic, and the action or the phobia itself is xenophobia, which is fear of strangers or fear of foreigners. Fear number 17, agoraphobia. Agoraphobia. This is the fear of open spaces or crowds. So there are people, when they see crowds, they freak out, they get tensed, they have anxiety attacks, they have panic attacks. And so if such a person has to do something in public where there's a large crowd, such a person freaks out, has stage fright, and is not able to function. So such a fear is agoraphobia. The person is agoraphobic. And so if there's a wide space and there are a lot of people, like a conference room, a big place where people are gathered, such a person has triggers. That fear is agoraphobic or agoraphobic. Yes, agoraphobic. Fear number 18, tachophobia. Tachophobia. So this is the fear of speed, right? So there are people, when they are driving, they don't like to go on top speed because they have fears for it. If they are in another person's car who is going on a top speed, the person can freak out and get attacked because they hate speed, right? So that kind of fear is called techophobia. Techophobia, the fear of speed. So a person who has this kind of fear is techophobic. Techophobic. Fear number 19, trypanophobia. Trypanophobia. This is the fear of needles or of injections. It's not only children who are trypanophobic, because I know of elderly people, older people who are actually trypanophobic. They hate needles. They fear injections. So the fear of injections is trypanophobia, and the person who has this kind of fear is trypanophobic. The last phobia that we are talking about is zoophobia. Zoophobia. I'm sure this rings a bell. It gives you an idea. So zoo has to do with animals, right? And so the fear of animals is zoophobia. There are people who fear all kinds of animals or some kinds of animals. So that kind of fear is zoophobia. Such a person is zoophobic. Zoophobic. So we've come to the end of this video. Today we talked about 20 phobias that exist in the world. These are realities that some people are dealing with. We said a phobia is something, it's an irrational fear that makes people have some triggers, some kind of anxieties about some situations, about some items, some creatures, some circumstances, right? These are fears that actually make people do things that they wouldn't necessarily or ordinarily want to do. So our goal as human beings, as people, is to be empathetic to them and to help them overcome some of these fears if it is within our domain. Right. So we hope you love this video. If you haven't subscribed to our channel is Speak English with Eric. Please subscribe now, like, comment, and share this video so that other people, your friends, your family can also have access to this wholesome content. So until we come your way with another lesson, we want you to take care of yourself and keep practicing, keep learning. We'll meet again. Bye-bye.